Hi everyone, I hope you enjoy these stories. No details have been cut out. I'm going to jump straight into the first one.
สวัสดีค่ะ
I am 22 years old and at the time of writing this, I am currently in Thailand for the first time. I have watched a lot of your videos along with some other YouTube channels, so I felt like, although it was my first time here, I was actually quite wise to everything that goes on, especially with the girls. I originally travelled here as part of a group tour that would last 18 days and I intended to stay in Thailand on my own after the tour had finished. It started in Bangkok and then we travelled south around some of the islands before flying from Phuket to Chiang Mai, which is where the tour would end. I was having a really good time travelling with the people on the tour, but as it was getting towards the end, I was looking forward to having some time here on my own. On the 14th day of the tour, we had travelled to Phuket from Phi Phi Island and we had one night in Patong before catching an early flight the next morning to Chiang Mai. Phuket was one of the main places that I wanted to visit for a longer period of time once I was travelling solo. So that one night in Phuket, I logged into Tinder and started looking for people that I could potentially meet when I go back. I got talking to a few girls, but there was one in particular where the conversation was flowing and we seemed to have a decent connection. I explained my situation to her and that I would be back in Phuket in around 1 week and she was happy with that and said she wanted to meet me. We carried on talking on WhatsApp while I was in Chiang Mai and it was going quite well, but I have always thought that I am quite a good judge of character and I just had a bit of a bad feeling about her at times. She seemed to have a very jealous and slightly crazy side to her. I stuck with it though, and soon enough the time came for me to travel back to Phuket. She had told me that she wants to stay with me in my hotel while I am there, and I was okay with that. Even though I knew it was a little bit risky because I had never met her before, I booked a nice hotel for 5 nights for both of us to stay in. I should add that I intended to stay in Phuket for longer than that, but I thought that 5 nights would be a good starting point. She worked until around 6 p.m. Monday to Friday but had weekends off. I arrived in Patong on a Thursday evening and I met her in my room that night. When we first met, I had a good feeling about the whole thing. She was prettier than I expected. There were no awkward stage or anything like that. We just got on very well together. I was relieved because I was quite worried about it before we met and I felt like I had been quite careless in booking a hotel for 5 nights for the both of us. I knew if something went wrong then it could be a very bad situation. That first night we went out to get some food because I was hungry and we ended up stopping at a restaurant near the hotel. When we sat down at the restaurant, she told me that she had already eaten, so she just ordered a mango, sticky rice and a water. I considered this as her passing a bit of a test because I really had my guard up in terms of not getting into a situation where I was getting scammed for a whole bunch of money. While we were in the restaurant, we talked a bit about our families and she told me that her mother gave birth to 4 girls in total. She has 3 sisters and she lives with one of them in Phuket. After the meal, we went for a walk along the beach and then back to the hotel room. We both had a good night, but not much happened in the bedroom. I didn't care about this at all because I knew that we were planning on spending a fair bit of time together and hopefully it would all sort of happen naturally. The next morning, she went to work early and I had the day to myself. I didn't do too much and I actually found myself just sitting around waiting for her to come back for the last couple of the hours of the day. I was genuinely looking forward to spending more time with her. When she got back from work on the Friday evening, she told me that she wanted to go to the mall in central Phuket and do some shopping and then have a steak dinner. Straight away I thought, here we go. I'm going to be spending the night trying to avoid buying things for her and then forking out for an expensive meal, but I agreed to it because I was still trying to work out a little bit, and if that was the case and I felt like I was just being treated as a walking ATM, then I knew that I would have to end things between us. We arrived at the mall and she decided that she was very hungry and wanted to eat straight away. So we ended up having a cheap meal in the food court, but that was what she wanted. We then went and did some shopping, and she was picking out some things that she thought I should buy for myself. I bought a couple of things that she picked up, but they were pretty cheap. She then started taking me into some of her favourite shops, and she bought a couple of things, but she paid for them herself. I honestly think that even if I would have offered, she wouldn't have let me pay for anything. Overall, we both had a really good night, and things advanced slightly in the bedroom that night, but we were taking things pretty slowly in that sense, and I was quite happy with that. However, that night she did make a joke at one point that she thinks I will get her pregnant during our time there. I didn't really find it very funny, and it was a little bit awkward for a minute. It was no problem though, and the next day was Saturday and our first full day together. Unfortunately, the weather was pretty bad, but we spent most of the day driving around on a motorcycle, visiting waterfalls and viewpoints around Phuket. When we arrived at the first waterfall, we were walking up the steps for what felt like forever to get to the top. Eventually the steps ended and there was a pathway that was basically going into the jungle. She took one look at it and said to me, "After looking at this, I feel like you have brought me here to kill me." I replied by saying, "Well, actually you brought me here." And she said, "Oh, that's right, I brought you here to kill you." I was able to laugh this off as a joke, but it did make me feel slightly uneasy, and it made me realise that I don't really know this girl at all, and we are spending a lot of time together. We went to the viewpoint at around the time the sun would be setting, but it was far too cloudy to be able to see the sunset anyway. While we were at the viewpoint, she made a joke about me jumping off or her pushing me off. I found this very strange, and there was just no funny side to it at all really. We then went to a steak restaurant for dinner, and to my surprise again, it was a very cheap place, and I was really starting to trust that she was not just using me for money or anything like that. However, while we were eating, she pretended to stab me in the neck with her steak knife and proceeded to say, "You are dead now, I've just killed you." This was the third reference that she had made to killing me in just a few hours, and I was starting to think that she must either have a very strange and dark sense of humour, or I am in quite serious danger. She also mentioned to me for the first time that her birthday is on the following Friday. I asked her what she wanted to do for her birthday, and she said that she is planning on going back to her hometown to visit her family, and she asked me to go with her. I didn't feel comfortable with that, and I told her that I would think about it, but she could tell that I was very skeptical. She said it's fine and that she won't force me to go. She then followed that up by saying, "No, actually, I will force you to go." I brushed this off as another joke, but I was starting to feel more and more uncomfortable around her. After the meal, we went back to the hotel for a bit because my football team were playing later that night, so I told her that I was planning on going out again to watch the match, and that she can either come with me to watch or just stay in the room. She said that she didn't want to stay in the room and watch Thai dramas on her own, and she will come to watch the match with me. So we went out that night and we actually had quite a good time. I had a few beers while watching the football, perhaps one too many, and we went back to the hotel. We were walking through reception to the elevator, and one of the security guards said something to her in Thai. I asked her what was said, and she said she didn't understand it, but I thought it seemed confrontational. We got up to the room and almost immediately the phone rang. I answered it, and a person from reception said, "You are the guy with the Thai woman, right?" I said yes, and he said, "I need to speak to her," so I passed the phone over. They were talking on the phone in Thai for a few minutes, and she was clearly getting upset. When she put the phone down, she said they want me to go down and give them my ID, but I don't have it with me right now. They think I'm some kind of a hooker. She was almost crying. I told her not to be upset and I will go down and speak to them. I went down to reception and I explained that I had booked the room for 2 guests and she has stayed there every night so far, so why are they acting like I have just brought her back for the night? I was quite angry because it was almost 2 a.m. at this point, so not only was it not the right time to be doing this, but I also felt that they had been quite unfriendly from the start. However, we ended up having a pretty calm discussion about it, and they just explained that they need her details because she is a guest of the hotel and they are not treating her like a one-night guest. In the end, we agreed that she would come down and just give her name and phone number, and then she could come back tomorrow to provide her actual ID. So I went back up to the room and told her what was said and asked her to come down to just give a few details. She said that was fine, but that she was not happy with how the situation had developed, and I have to say that I agreed with her. We went back down together and she instantly marched up to the desk and was being very confrontational. It didn't take long to turn into a shouting match between her and some of the reception staff, and some security guards appeared behind us. I kept asking her to calm down, but it wasn't working, and I felt like we were going to be kicked out of the hotel. I didn't know what was being said, but eventually it did calm down and she showed them a photo of her ID card from a phone. The guy at reception looked at it and then looked at me and said, "You know that's a ladyboy you're with, right?" I don't know where it came from, but without hesitation, I just said yes, and that was the end of it. Deep down, I was in shock and I didn't know what to do. I felt very let down, and not only had she not told me the truth, but she had purposely deceived me with some of the things that she had said. I think that was my instinctive reaction, because at the time I was just in a mode of trying to calm the situation down, and if I would have done anything different it would have just escalated more, but I was now trying to think of the best way to get myself out of this situation. She wasn't very happy the next morning because she said that I showed her no affection during the night. I can't hardly remember it because I was quite drunk, but it's hardly a surprise. The next day she was going to have to go back to her house to get her ID card and then come back, which I knew would take at least an hour. My plan was to pack up my things and leave the hotel as soon as she went to do that. I know this sounds cowardly, and it is really, but I was just quite scared, to be honest, and that night I had seen a very emotional and aggressive side to her. I just felt like telling her face to face and it wouldn't have ended well, and it could have been potentially dangerous. All day on that Sunday I was asking her when she would go home to get her ID card, and she just kept saying later. I genuinely wasn't feeling too good that day. I think the mix of cheap steak and a lot of beer upset my stomach a bit, but I was making it out to be worse than it was, an excuse to not do much that day and just stay in the room. I was trying to pretend that everything was okay. We did end up staying in the room most of the day, but we did go out to get some food in the afternoon. As we left the hotel, she checked to see if her ID card was in her motorcycle, and just my luck, it was. We went to a restaurant and the mood while we were there was not good. I think she could tell that something was wrong, but she had actually been very kind to me all day and was trying to look after me because I wasn't feeling too good. While we were at the restaurant, I decided that when we get back to the room, it wouldn't be a good time to let her down gently and tell her that I'm going to leave. She must have been half expecting it at this point, which is why I thought it would be a good time. We weren't speaking much while we were there and it was getting very awkward, so I started making polite conversation and somehow we ended up sitting there laughing and joking the whole time. She then held my hand all the way back to the hotel, and when we got to the room she basically put me in bed and started neatly folding up all of my clothes. I decided that it wasn't the right time to end things with her because it just felt like she was happy and would not have taken it well at the time. It was about 3 p.m. on the Sunday and I went to sleep. She joined me in bed not long after I fell asleep, and we didn't get out of bed until around 8 p.m. I was happy with this because I really just wanted that day to end. All we were doing in bed was sleeping and talking a bit. When we were talking, she was telling me all about how great her hometown is and trying to convince me to go. It ended with her making me promise that I will go with her and also promise that we will be together forever. I obviously didn't want to promise either of those things, but I just went along with it because I couldn't see what else I could do. She also got me to add her on Facebook, and then she spent a few minutes on her phone before showing me her screen and saying, "This is your mum, this is your dad, this is your brother," etc. I asked her how to stop this because it made me feel very uncomfortable, and I felt that she was being extremely too upfront with basically forcing me to make those promises. I then got up to go to the toilet and she grabbed onto me and said, "Look, I'm stronger than you. You will never be able to get away from me. I'm going to force you in the bed today." She laughed after that and let me go. I went into the bathroom and I couldn't believe what had happened. I felt so uncomfortable and really did not want to spend the night there. I went back into the room and again pretended that everything was okay. We ordered some food because I said that I did not feel like going out, and we played a couple of games before going to bed early. I managed to sleep most of the night, and before I knew it, she was getting up to go to work. I had already decided that I was going to leave that morning pretty much as soon as she had gone to work. She got herself ready and left just after telling me about what she wants to do when she gets back from work. She told me that she wants to walk along the beach and watch the sunset and the stars. I just put on a brave face, went along with it. She left for work and I felt a huge relief. I started packing my things almost immediately and got ready to leave. I booked a hotel near Phuket Airport for that night. I had a flight booked in the morning to leave Phuket. I left the key at reception and got a taxi to my new hotel. While I was in the taxi, I sent a message to her saying that I have to leave Thailand because of a family emergency and I'm currently rushing to the airport to catch my flight. I was obviously very apologetic and everything as well, but that was the basis of the message. She obviously didn't believe it and she was very upset and angry. She was constantly sending me messages saying that I have lied to her and I have ruined her life. She also said that she knew that things were not right since that Saturday night and that I am leaving her because she is not a real woman. I was sticking with my story and just kept apologising. She was asking me to send pictures of my ticket and everything, which obviously I couldn't do, and when I arrived at the hotel, I admitted that I was still in Thailand. I was honest with her and told her that things were not right since the Saturday night and I couldn't say it in person because I didn't know how she would react. She calmed down a lot after that and we exchanged some very pleasant messages. I had no hard feelings as such, but I just didn't want to be with her for several reasons. For no real reason, she then switched again from being very calm and reasonable to acting completely crazy. She was back at the hotel room now, as we still had one more night booked in there. She was telling me about how much she was crying and how she will never be happy for the rest of her life if she didn't have me. It is important to bear in mind at this point that we had only met each other about 4 days ago. She did manage to take a break in all of her crying to send me voice notes, send me pictures of the hotel room and bombarded me with all sorts of messages. I was trying to ignore it as much as possible, but it was starting to get to me because she was purposely making me feel very guilty and telling me that I have ruined her life. She was also saying that I will never be happy without her and that I will never find anyone that loves me as much as she does. I was walking around in the town that I was staying in while trying to read these messages and I found myself getting upset, so I started heading back to the hotel. I was walking alone down a dark street when I read one of her messages that said she wanted to die now, that she doesn't have me. This obviously grabbed my attention and I took the bait. I was almost certain that this was just one of her ways of manipulating me, but I had to take it seriously. I started to reply to her messages, which just made it worse. She knew that she had my attention now and she kept saying worse and worse things. By the time that I had got back to the hotel, I'd actually started to cry a little bit. I know it sounds extreme, but this was like a form of psychological torture for me. I wanted to block her so that she couldn't message me, but I thought that I might just make her go even crazier. I was in a bad situation. I just didn't know what to do. Another important thing to remember is that she is still in the hotel room and it has my credit card on it, so I will be charged for any damage. I had considered that before I left the hotel, but it was a risk I was willing to take. After hours of receiving constant abusive messages, she actually calmed down and started asking me to go back to her. I said that it was not possible because I'm far away, so she asked if we could carry on messaging each other and maybe we could meet up again during my next time in Thailand. I agreed to that even though I had no intention of seeing her again. I did that because I thought she would take it much better if we carry on talking and it just sort of fizzles out over time. For days after that, she would message me as if we were in a relationship. It was so strange, but even stranger was that at least once a day she would just turn into being a completely abusive again, and it would last for about an hour before she just stopped and it was like nothing ever happened. She then started begging me to see her again for her birthday. She said that she doesn't care if it's the last time, but she just wanted to see me for her birthday and say goodbye properly. I felt like the real reason was to either get me to spend a lot of money on her for her birthday, or she wanted to see me again to cause some kind of physical harm to me. I should also mention that ever since I left, she has been begging me to tell her where I am. I have been letting her down as gently as possible and telling her that I don't think I will ever see her again. And at the time of writing this, I've just about managed to shake her off. So hopefully that will be the end of it. I have her blocked on all social media apart from WhatsApp because I still worry about the things that she was saying. And so I think it's best that she has somewhere that she can message me. As I look back on it now, I start to think that I could have handled it better, but I believe that your best judgment of a situation is when you are living in it, and I just wanted it all to end with nobody getting hurt. I will be very interested to hear yours and your viewers' thoughts on this and whether people think I made the correct decisions. I will also expect that people will probably laugh at me, and that is fine as well. At the end of the day, if you don't laugh, you will cry. Okay, hindsight is a wonderful thing, isn't it? I mean, okay, look, the guy was 22 years old. Do you remember when you were 22? I made a lot of mistakes when I was 22. First time in Thailand, he met a very, very manipulative lady boy. Did he do anything wrong? Not really, because he lack of experience. What should you do? I have witnessed this where a guy has met a girl on a dating site. He's turned up, met her, and discovered it was a lady boy. It's simple. You just be totally honest. When you find out that person is a lady boy, you just say, look, I went on here to date a lady. You've deceived me. You're a lady boy. I'm not interested in lady boys. Goodbye. That's it. That's the end of the story. You don't have to do anything more than that. All right. But to this guy being 22, I hope it doesn't sour your experiences of Thailand. This is quite it's not a love story. It's just a very, very short story sent in to me by a lady living in Bangkok. And it's just one of those things, only in Thailand. It's a very popular saying in Thailand, only in Thailand. And this is one of those things that can only happen in Thailand, okay? I have a short story that involves a friend who worked as an actress doing small parts in Thai TV and movies. She was thinking about buying a car but had zero driving experience. She knew I regularly played golf, so pestered me to take her golfing so she could practice driving the car, even though she had no interest in playing golf. I didn't want to do it because I thought she'd be bored with 4 to 5 hours on the golf course, but she was hard to say no to. I was standing a few yards away looking over the rental clubs when the golf cart guy pulled up with our cart. I was looking the opposite direction when I heard a scream and turned to see my friend shooting off towards the practice green with the guy running after her. Luckily, she took her foot off the accelerator, but unfortunately, she didn't find the brake pedal. The guy caught up to her about halfway across the practice green. Up to that point, the cart had not done any serious damage. Then the guy grabbed the steering wheel while jumping forward to lock the brakes, causing the cart to come to a sliding sideways finish, ripping holy hell out of the middle of the putting green. As he calmly reversed the cart back to the concrete, I started frantically calculating in my head the currency conversion rate on my credit card limits if I pulled them together. When he had the cart back to the starting position, he proceeded to quietly give my friend a 5-minute driving lesson like it never happened. My caddy loaded the clubs and we headed off to the first tee. We had a fun afternoon and she got plenty of driving practice without further incident. After the round, I was bracing myself for the reckoning, but not a word was said. You just have to love Thailand. And that's basically it, guys. Just a little experience there. So if you've got, a little story that you want to send in, I will read it. And at this point in the upload, let me just say, I'm sure there's guys and ladies out there who've sent me stories and you're thinking, why doesn't this guy why doesn't he read my story out? I will. If I don't read it, I write to everybody anyway. If I'm going to read, when your story is due to be read out, I'll send you an email saying it's due next Saturday. I'm going to read it out. So let's jump straight into our third story. And this is another nice one. I guess 2008 is a good place to begin my story, as my first experience with the internet dating begins there too. I had separated from my wife of 20 years recently and had found myself very low on funds as the end of the relationship was very costly for me. I had enough to put a deposit on a new home, but then I decided to go away from the city into the remote parts of Western Australia to earn a few extra dollars to get away from the pain of the separation and rent my new house out to help pay the mortgage off sooner. I had a plan to stay for 12 months in an exceedingly small, remote Aboriginal village, which was a very long way from Perth, and to focus on my work and stay single to keep my life uncomplicated. I stayed out there for 8 years. I made good friends in the bush, and I had a wonderful time over the next 12 months. So then I decided to stay for another year, as I was offered a promotion, which meant I could pay extra off my mortgage. But then I began to get lonely, and so I decided to join a pen pal site called Interpals. Some of your listeners may have heard of it. I had messages from ladies all over the world, which surprised me because I was 40 years of age, and honestly, I thought that I was too old for anyone to be interested in me as a serious partner. I had never been out with an Asian lady, so I decided to respond to a message from a Korean lady who seemed to have an incredibly happy smile and looked quite attractive. She wrote back the next day, and we then continued to correspond for a few months until she asked to visit me. To cut a long story short, the Korean lady and I didn't really hit it off, but she met another guy in another Australian small village who was a gold prospector who liked her. She moved in with him, and later they got married. I then decided to bite the bullet and go and meet a lady from Thailand who had also been corresponding with me over the last few months. She was 7 years younger than me, so I was surprised that she would talk to an older man like myself. Her name is Joy, a nice friendly girl. I booked a ticket for December with Thai Airways. I was not an experienced traveller, as the only flight I'd ever been on internationally was a Boeing 707 in 1967, when I was just 10 years old, when my family emigrated from the UK to Australia as £10 POMs, as we were then known. I had commitments for Christmas, but I planned to leave straight after that. December came and my holidays began. I went back to the city to spend Christmas with my teenage kids, which was not genuinely nice as they were going to their mothers for most of the day. Just before New Year, I took off on my maiden flight to Bangkok and was seated in the middle of the aisle of the Boeing 777 next to a couple of Aussies who quizzed me about my trip. I explained it was my first trip to Thailand and wasn't sure what to expect. They grinned at me, and the older of the two said, "Pom Ruk Kun," to the ladies, and I will be okay. We shared a few drinks and settled into the flight. I wondered what these words meant. The flight landed and I could not believe my eyes, as I was from Perth, a small city with a tiny international airport, and I was in the queue of hundreds of people waiting to go through customs in the largest airport I'd ever seen. Finally, I made it through to the exit, and there to meet me was Joy and her daughter, who was the only one that spoke English. It turned out that all of my messages and emails were read and responded to by Joy's daughter. Luckily, I was very polite whenever I wrote. I had only ever had one real relationship, as I dated one girl when I was 19 and married her and was with her for over 20 years. Therefore, I was very inexperienced at dating and meeting the ladies. We then walked to the multi-storey car park where Joy had parked her car. It was quite dark in there and quite warm, but the heat didn't bother me, as I had been living in a very remote desert town where it was quite often 40°C or more. We drove out towards the hotel and the traffic became very heavy, but at least they were driving on the left-hand side of the road, which made me feel much more comfortable. My eyes were wide open, taking in all the sights, but I was surprised to see how dark it was, because it was only 5 p.m. I pressed the button to wind down the passenger window and instantly noticed that it was not dark at all. I then realised that all the windows as well as the windscreen had very heavy tinting on them. Of course, this is not allowed where I live. Joy's daughter said that they never wind down the windows in Bangkok traffic. I wondered why. Joy dropped me at the hotel and said she would come and see me tomorrow. After checking in, I spent an hour or so just looking out of my window and was amazed at the traffic and the large number of taxis. I certainly was a small town boy out of his depths in Bangkok. Later on, I went for a walk up the main road and was approached by a man who asked me to go into a bar as there were a lot of ladies there. I was unsure of what to do, so I just kept on walking. After an hour of walking, I went back to the hotel and settled in for the night. The next day, Joy and I spent time together, even though I didn't speak Thai and she spoke very little English. However, we seemed to get on okay. Joy never stayed with me at night time and we never even kissed, which suited me as I had hardened my heart to prevent myself from getting emotionally hurt. One evening, Joy said we are going to meet with her friends at an outdoor restaurant somewhere near a large shopping centre called Fashion Island. It was lovely there outside in the open, the weather was perfect. I was amazed to see TV screens showing English football around the walls. Everyone was very friendly even though they did not speak English, and the food was fabulous. I had never eaten Thai food before, but I loved it. Everyone was speaking Thai, so I sat back and took in the environment. I had noticed some strange looks from some of the people at the end table and I asked Joy's daughter what was going on. She said that they were advising Joy not to trust me as I might take her back to Australia and sell her to an Australian mamasan. I was happy that Joy had good friends that cared for her. This told me a lot about her character. When we were ready to leave, I offered to pay the bill, which I was expecting to be quite a lot as there were 8 people and we had a great meal and few drinks as well. The total was less than I would have spent for a night out with my friends in Perth, which would be alcohol only and no food. At that time, it was 30 baht to $1 Australian. I had an incredibly enjoyable time in Bangkok and I decided to ask Joy to come to Australia to visit me, which she agreed to do so. Joy was certainly not a girl that was to be used to life in the Australian bush. She had lived in Bangkok for most of her life, had a maid that looked after her house and kids. Her house, which I had visited, was in a private estate that had security guards on the gate and a beautiful park and a lake. Her ex-husband was a womanizer according to her, and the family fortune, including the family home, was lost in a bad business deal. She never really had a job as she was from a good family that gave her a good start in life, but unfortunately her ex-husband squandered her money and so she was now destitute. Eventually, after much paperwork and financial transactions with the Australian and Thai government and a trip to the embassy in Bangkok, this tourist visa for Joy was approved. She came to live with me in the remote village, a place you will not be able to even imagine unless you have been there. It literally was the end of the earth, a small Aboriginal community where English was never spoken apart from at school where I was the principal. Can you imagine what the local residents were thinking when they first laid eyes on a very pretty petite woman from Bangkok wearing expensive clothes and shoes, sheltering from the sun with an umbrella as she walked from our government house on a gravel path to the schoolyard and back again? All around us are desert people who live in a very harsh environment who are extremely tough but shy. They ate bush turkeys, grubs, honeybag ants, lizards and bush fruits as well as the occasional kangaroo. After school, I came back to the house and we talked about how she felt in a very limited way due to the language barrier, but we understood each other. She was nervous and was in a mild state of shock. Years later, she told me how worried she was and how disappointed she was in Australia at that particular time, as it was just heat, dirt, flies and a small villages with no shopping centres. Of course, she was yet to see Perth or any of the major cities. Joy told me that she didn't cook, so I made the evening meal for the next few nights until she finally said that she would do all the cooking from now on. As the tourist visa had almost expired, I drove Joy along the 250-kilometre dirt track to the airport near Ayers Rock and we said farewell. I was unsure if I would see her again, and after such a baptism of fire for her out there in the harsh but beautiful Victoria Desert. A year later, Joy and her daughter came to live with me as I moved around the Australian bush for 5 years, and then we all moved to Perth, where I now run a metropolitan school. Both Joy and her daughter are very proud people and have paid back all the money I spent on the visas, even though I never asked for it or even wanted it. Joy and I have now been married for almost 11 years and we are very happy together. We go back to Thailand every year to see her extended family, who I'm sure are relieved that I turned out to be a decent guy and I never ever did sell Joy to an Australian mamasan. Okay, so there you go guys, quite a nice story there, another successful one. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed these 3 stories today, guys. If you like what I do here, I would appreciate your support. There is a link in the description below. And at the very least, please subscribe to the channel, or you can become a member. All right, that's it for me. Once again, thanks for putting up with me for quite a long video. And I shall be back with some more stories next Saturday.